Haramai, welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, the 2nd of December 2021. We do have the media present. Kia ora, welcome. And of course we do have public and whānau watching from afar. So to you, no mai haramai, welcome to our meeting today as well. So we, as I said, we're being streamed live. So thank you. Could you please turn off your mobile phones, and if we do need to take a break, we'll factor that in this afternoon as well. We do have, oh yes, thank you. Our karakia today is for Councillor Maxwell. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Amen. Thank you. So we have apologies. I've got an apology from Councillor Kumar. He was here this morning, but he can't be here this afternoon. Mr. Biasini Tule and Councillor Wang, you have to leave a little earlier. So thank you for that. Could I please have a mover and a seconder that we accept these? Oh, sorry, Mr. Thomas too. Yes, I beg your pardon. Mr. Thomas is also an apology. Thank you. So I have a mover and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you, Your Worship. It's been moved and seconded that our apologies be accepted. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Carried. Any declarations of interest, please? Oh, thank you. Urgent items not on the agenda? Oh, no. Thank you. So we're already to item number 5 on the agenda, confirmation of our minutes, the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes of the 11th of November 2021. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes 11th of November 2021 be confirmed as a true and correct record? Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Councillor Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. Are there any corrections to our minutes, please? I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. We do have the minutes of these. Yes, right, another set of minutes here. The Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes, 16th of November 2021. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the minutes be confirmed as a true and correct record? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Thank you, Your Worship. Are there any corrections to the minutes, please? Carl, thank you. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Oh, sorry, Councillor, sorry, beg your pardon. It's Dr. Morgan, rather than Mr. Morgan. Thank you. We'll make those corrections. Thank you for that. I'll put that motion then with that correction. So all those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you for that. The recommendation. Oh no, sorry. Here we go. So before we get into our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee items, I'd like to just continue where we left off this morning for the Operations and Monitoring Committee. And so there were 3 further reports to be received, and that one was, the first one of that is the Infrastructure and Environment Solutions Group, and that's Stavros Michael. Kia ora, Stavros. Welcome this afternoon. And we have another 2 of these to follow reports.
Kia ora, Madam Chair. Kia ora tātou katoa. I will continue along the lines of my colleague's presentation earlier today with regards to traversing back and having some reflections about work programs and attainments over the last 12 months. By necessity, I constrain my presentation into mainly around looking forward into how we addressing our future growth and demand in our district. However, I would like to sort of draw elected members' attention to that it is quite important to pay attention and distinguish the domain between activity and achievement, and sometimes in actually taking for granted a whole range of work programs that ensure the safe and reliable provision of core services. We neglect to recognize that on a day-to-day basis, and despite some headwinds and some challenging situations, especially arising from the pandemic, and the lack of and the scarcity of skills, we have been able to manage a balanced approach in terms of delivering our core services. And again, when we're talking about infrastructure, environmental services, it is quite important to note that we have a core responsibility to provide services on the foundation of about $1.4 billion worth of assets, would generate a significant degree of efforts and energy to deliver reliable services to our community. And just very quickly, just to remind all of us that on a day-to-day basis, we deliver somewhere in the region of 30 million litres of good quality drinking water to our community. About 20 million we receive and treat and dispose effectively about 20 million litres of wastewater. We managed over the last 12 months to address any flooding risks, despite of the fact that we have recognized that we do have a system of stormwater system that has been running at the capacity for many years, and of course with the climate change and new requirements, that is not a challenge that should be ignored. Our roading network accommodates somewhere in the region of about 200,000 vehicle movements a day. And in terms of our day-to-day deliveries, we collect and dispose about 8,000 collections of household waste and recyclables each day. On top of that, we have a responsibility to manage the ongoing readiness and preparation for a significant civil defense in an emergency event. And at the same time, as my colleagues mentioned earlier in our presentations, we worked very closely with the relevant lead agencies to manage the impacts and effects on our community of the pandemic in terms of providing welfare assistance, supporting the DHB, and utilizing our crisis management team system to provide whatever assistance we can, while at the same time we had the responsibilities on employer to look after and protect our own employees through rostering systems, through social distancing, and through appropriate risk mitigation processes. I have to accept, like any responsible infrastructure manager, that from time to time there are incidents and faults into our services. However, in the context of the large variety of services we provide, those incidents and faults remain very well within our agreed KPIs. So we have not exceeded our KPIs and our performance in any element of our core infrastructure services. So I'll progress forward now with our presentation. And again, as I said, this is focused mainly against progress we want to make in the short, medium, and long-term future to accommodate these districts' growth aspirations, housing aspirations, and obviously environmental protections, and consistent with our partnering commitments with Manawhenua. I start first with core objectives of our transportation system. transportation system comprising state highways and our local network is really geared to enable day-to-day activity. But going forward in the future, we have focused our energies and effort to work with the Waka Kotahi and our government agencies and partners to ensure that our state highway corridors are in fit condition to deliver our growth aspirations, enable housing, and making sure that those housing proposals are consentable. What we have at the moment, we have in progress somewhere in the region of $80 million of government investment in the state highway corridors, and over the next 2-3 years, it's another $30 to $50 million earmarked to be spent into our districts. Key components of that activity, we have the Eastern Corridor, where stage 1 from Sala to Isle has been almost completed, and you can see some pictures in front of you which recognizes some significant improvements both in terms of capacity but also in terms of providing opportunities for active modes of transport and safety. And this is a picture of the major intersection of Tinai Road and Tarawera Road. We do recognize, obviously, during the process of the construction, there have been inconvenience and there has been, some annoyance, to the users of the road. But again, the key message here is that the augmentation of the capacity of that road, both in terms of efficiency and safety, unlocks the development opportunity into our eastern suburbs. Moving forward after this area here, of course, we've got stage 2, phase 1, which already started from Isles Road to the airport with another $35 million been spent. And to the west-north, you see in front of you the improvements made to the keynote of the Nongodaha Hamilton intersection, the roundabout, the Nongodaha roundabout, where work has been completed at the beginning of November. And of course, to a large degree, provides an efficient gateway into the urban part of the city. And of course, the other thing that it will do going forward in the future, it sets the foundations and as a prerequisite for a special plan in the Kotaha area. So again, that was an investment of about $15 million made by Waka Kotahi with our collaboration. And I think that is the entry gate into our future growth plans into this particular area. The next element of our core infrastructure in terms of critical assets is progress towards the upgrade of our wastewater treatment plant into the city. As I said earlier, that treatment plant at the moment receives on average about 20,000 cubic meters of wastewater each day, and it is treated at a level that it's appropriate before it is discharged and to meet the resource concerns. The progress of the upgrade of the treatment plant, it will manifest itself over the next 6 months to you. We've done a significant amount of work to prepare for that, and a report will come to Council in early 2022, where we will set sail to commence the upgrade and the construction of the new treatment plant based on a new system of membrane bioreactor and obviously the installation of UV treatment facilities. And the reason for that is that without the upgrade of the treatment plants, our future growth aspirations to accommodate up to 10,000 houses in the future cannot be achieved, because we cannot meet our both capacity requirements but also our environmental concerns requirements to treat wastewater to the level that meets our commitments of discharging nitrogen and phosphorus into Rotorua Lake. So these pieces of work are in progress. Design is almost completed at the moment, and we're negotiating with our partners really to come back to you with a proposal early in the new calendar year to start commencing that work, hopefully from the middle of 2022. Pieces of work that's been installed today, that we have made improvements to our dewatering facilities, which meant that our biosolids have been reduced by about 10 to 15% because we dewatering the biosolids more efficiently than we used to do. We also have installed additional equipment to make sure the treatment plant can operate efficiently and effectively, and meeting our resource concerns with the current demands, and also, more importantly, having in mind and aligned with the future capacity of the treatment plant. And these pieces of equipment are already into place, and they will be complementary to the full upgrade of the treatment plant. What it meant with all these additions to the existing treatment plant, it means that we have reduced the risk of any failure or any inability to meet our resource consent requirements. And again, this is a quick presentation about the area we use into the forest at this point in time to disperse and irrigate the treated effluent from the current treatment plant. It's a significant occupation of land for a number of years, about 400 hectares of land used up there. And the intention with the wastewater treatment upgrade is that we will be reducing that area down to less than 10% of what we currently use. And that is consistent with the agreements we have reached with the CNI and Mana Whenua to that effect. And of course, that requires a significant commitment to maintain faith and consistent approach to reducing the imposition of wastewater treatment into onto the Whenua in that particular area. This is a schematic conceptual representation where once we finish the upgrade of the treatment plant, and we'll be able to treat almost double the capacity of our current wastewater treatment capacity. We'll be able to absorb wet weather flows, which means that protects us against unexpected or flows to the treatment plant that are resulting from the effects of climate change and inflow and infiltration. But also the effluent will be treated to a quality which means it can be discharged through an appropriate land conduct system to the receiving environment. And these works at the moment are in progress together with CNI and various other Mana Whenua groups that are involved into the Puarenga reference group. Again, that work has been undertaken extensively over the last 6 to 12 months. And as I said, in order to be able to come to you with a final proposal early in the new calendar year, it presents to you or represents for you another piece of the puzzle to unlock our future growth potential. Another piece of work we do in terms of reinforcing our ability to convey, transmit, and treat wastewater is emphasis on some of our critical rising mains, where wastewater for each individual house go into main conveyance trunks, and those trunks take that sewage into the treatment plants. And in due course, by 2025, when the treatment plant is upgraded, obviously, we'll have a much better capacity to accommodate the proposed intensification and additional housing into the district. However, we do have some challenges. And as you see there, this is a wastewater main pipe that's on Victoria Street. And what you can see there is the effect of geothermal activity and H2S into our system. While managing the effects of that work, also have been able to meet all our conveyance requirements, and we did not have any breaches of resource consent to date. So we proactively anticipating that with the growth of population and growth of housing, we in some areas of our conveyance system for wastewater, we need to create additional capacity. What you can see in schematic form up there is that the main trunk that currently goes through Victoria Street will be duplicated over the next couple of years through another main that will lead to the treatment plant. So it will give us plenty of capacity to receive, pump, and transmit wastewater to an upgraded treatment plant, and obviously creates a platform, the foundation for my colleague Jean-Paul to pursue our district plan growth aspirations. Again, water is a significant foundational service for the districts. And again, other than providing our current average 30 million liters of high-quality drinking water, we need to make provisions for an increase in demand, or at least about 30% over the next few years as a result of housing. And now we have embarked into a significant optimized renewal project where we are removing unsuitable mains for water supply. We have a significant chunk of our 762 kilometers of pipelines in water that are being constructed with asbestos cement pipes. You will hear from the water regulator and at the national level that there are some concerns about the presence of lead into water. We do not have that problem yet here, or nitrates into the water. But a significant chunk of these problems arise from the fact that we do have some, not just us at the national level, we do have pipelines and joints and fittings that contribute to that lead leachate. And obviously the efforts we're taking jointly with our partners to modify the land use, and especially around water sources, hopefully and gradually will eliminate any potential risk from nitrates into the water. So obviously this is, this piece of work is very important for our long-term reliable performance of the network, because we do need to have a healthy foundation for our growth aspirations. And again, these are just some pictures of main lines that have been installed at this point in time. And we spend somewhere in the region of about $3 million a year to provide optimized renewal to our pipes, not just to replace like with like, but also to make provisions for the anticipated future demand. The current program for this financial year alone is progressing to plan. These are all the streets where we have planned and we are constructing and installing new water mains. And despite of all the challenges we had with regards to supplies, contractors, social distancing, availability of resources, and so on, our program is on track, and we expect it to continue to remain on track. Again, talking to the teams you employ a relatively small team of direct resources, about 30 or 35 staff in an infrastructure team, but we do have applied a prudent balance of in-house versus external partnering solution, and we're using the skills and availability of our contractors to make sure we're not falling behind into our renewal program, which leads into suboptimal condition of the assets, which leads into inability to meet our future demand. Again, just various sort of components of what works we're doing so far this year. This is a very important element which I think my colleague Gina Rangi mentioned earlier, that to the best of our ability, and there's a long history behind the 25 Springs. I won't traverse it, but after a significant energy and efforts input by Mana Whenua, Ngāti Rangi Waewahi, and ourselves, we have managed to overcome the legacy of mistrust and obviously an approach where we lead to joint outcomes pursuit, and we have now secured a joint resource consent. The owners was Ngāti Rangi Waewahi and ourselves, where the network operators and owners have joined forces in goodwill, and we're progressing towards securing a significant water supply to the north that will enable the reliable delivery of good quality drinking water to the area of Nogodaha and parts of Kutu in an emergency. But more importantly, we began now to have a joint approach, and we're working closely together to address the restoration of that Puna. What you see in front of you there is a schematic approach where the old building, a concrete slab that was sitting on top of the spring, where the Mana Whenua found it quite an insult to their cultural heritage, will be removed, and a sensitive, culturally appropriate, and more importantly, designed by the iwi by Ngāti Waihi will be restored. The Puna will be restored, will be presented in a way that is consistent with the aspirations they had for many, many years. And all these things are happening and delivering mutual benefits. And I think if you look forward to the Three Waters reforms, one of the main aspirations of the reforms, at least on paper, we're putting it here in practice, is to work collaboratively with, with iwi and jointly, manage, these essential services for our communities. So I think we've made some significant progress onto that. And again, you'll see a link the new year, recommendations to you to sign on to the construction program for the restoration of the Puna. Stormwater, again, it's one of the main issues that, we talked earlier that, has been a barrier and a constraint of future aspirations, the combined effects of climate change, the geographic location of the Rotorua districts, and the availability of land in the periphery of the caldera makes the management of stormwater a challenging aspect. And to have, over the last 12 months or so, developed our full master plan that looks after the future stormwater management system for the districts and takes into account the areas to be developed both in terms of greenfield and into densification. And we have made progress, and actually we are right now in the phase of actually building stormwater attenuation systems. JP will talk to you a bit later about our applications to the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund, which will be mainly dedicated towards the management of stormwater, both in terms of quantity, but also in terms of quality. And again, all these pieces of work will be done with one common outcome in mind. It's to enable the construction of a healthier community, a safer community, but more importantly, a community where the average person will have an average and reasonable chance to live under a roof that they consider to be their home. The works we're undertaking at the moment that have started from early November. It's the first piece of the puzzle into the west. It's an attenuation pond on utilizing the existing old system into Lyndon Park. And we presented to you earlier, but obviously we are now in the phase of construction, and it's no longer an aspiration. It's a work in progress, and it will take place. Again, this is the pieces of work that we have to upgrade. So we've got some old outlet pipes that need to be reinforced. It will be addressing climate change effects. A dam style structure will be constructed around that Lyndon Park that will have a significant risk design mitigation behind it. As you can see in front of it, that's a significant area which will ensure in the event of 1 in 100 years of the 1% AEP, as we say it, we will be able to channel, retain and manage water and discharge it at a rate that will not put at risk the downstream properties. A significant chunk of this work has been funded by the Department of Internal Affairs as part of the water reforms. And as I said, right now we are in progress, and this work will be finished by June 22. But again, that is a significant piece of activity that will enable and unlock somewhere in the region of about 1,000 new houses in that Western District. Another piece of the puzzle to the east is the work we're doing in terms of our stormwater master plan around the Wharenui Ngāti tribal lands area. You can see that green catchment around you. The periphery of the catchment is all the area for potential development, and the intention there, which is already in progress, stage 1 is already completed. 11 stages of development take place in the lands, comprising just over 1,000 houses. In order to enable us to take place, we're building a bulk stormwater attenuation system in where people are are in place. Two key objectives there. We de-risking the land development of tribal lands. That means you don't have to do stormwater attenuation on a stage-by-stage approach. It's more efficient, it's more effective. The dams will be constructed with a peak assessment of 10,000 years. There will be water quality assessment upstream downstream. We are engaged with the Eastern Puna group to make sure that those conveyed stormwater to the lake is consistent with the aspirations of the community in the eastern side. But in terms of risk mitigation, obviously, we're taking extreme efforts to protect the existing properties in or at this point. Again, if you cluster together with the improvement on away 30 on my roads, stages 1, stages 2, hopefully stages 3 in the near future, stormwater attenuation, water supply installations, implementation of the wastewater treatment plant that will receive wastewater from all these new areas will be enough to unlock 10,000 potential houses for the future. Years to address not just the quantity of stormwater but the quality of stormwater. Yeah. And a lot of the open drains will be gradually converted into a combination of wetlands and conveyance system that is able to treat water. So by the time it hits a lake, it has received significant natural treatment to retain nutrients and obviously to some natural self-cleansing outcomes.
And is that linked to safety? Were you always worried about children playing in the drains?
I think safety is always going to be a consideration. However, I think so many people would also say that the question is that how far do you go in terms of fencing of these areas. The question here is to have an appropriate treatment of open drains that's clearly earmarked. They have safe crossing points and managed in a way that really do not present what we call a hidden risk to the adjacent community.
Thank you.
Councillor Yates.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Me mihi kātika ki a koe Stavros. Sōtira ki tō tima. Fantastic report. My question is around and congratulations actually on the Eastern Arterial route, that is coming along really well. The Northwestern Arterial route still seems to have quite a bit of congestion. I know that there's still a little bit of work still to do there. Any update on when that might actually start flowing a little bit easier?
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, you're quite right. I think the bulk of or what you call the practical completion of the roundabout has been completed, but you probably noticed that they're still doing some utility works around the place. And obviously, when you have cones and signage, people naturally slow down. But I would expect, judging by the traffic modelling of Wakakota here, that we should have a much better flow of traffic, by by Christmas time, really.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, Dr. Morgan.
Ai, kia ora tātou. Today, ka mihi kia koe pā, tō tātou kaiarahi mo te hui nei. O te rā, tēnā koutou katoa. Just a couple of comments and a question. Just on the stormwater, I think it would be ill-advised to put water courses into drains. I heard a young person in Auckland once refer to pipes as colonised streams, and Auckland certainly doesn't want any more piped water. We shouldn't be heading in that direction, I don't think. All due regard to public health and safety, but the ecosystem services provided by our waterways when they're actually in their natural state is, too valuable. The second point is to do with the wastewater revised disposal. 400 hectares at, pretty close to its maximum infiltration rate, Stavros, and we're reducing it to 40 hectares. That suggests to me that we aren't looking at infiltration anymore, but rather, to use your term just used, we're looking at overland flow. Is that a point that's been made clear to iwi and to the council, that the water will eventually arrive directly over the land into Pawaringa stream?
Thank you for the inquiry. I think probably it'd be worthwhile noting that we have arrived at what we call a sustainable and our forest approach with CNI, and you should know that we are working with a cultural assessment group which comprises a number of Hapu representatives to identify what is the best way to convey a very highly treated wastewater away from the storage ponds, in that the receiving area towards the streams. Now, you're quite right. Obviously, the 400 hectares of irrigation is no longer needed because all the treatments to reach the nutrient levels that have been consented will be achieved at the treatment plant, and it's going to be just a matter of actually conveying the water, the treated water, back to the receiving environment in a way that is appropriate for the cultural perspectives of the Hapu and the Manawhenu who are involved into that element. We do have a group that we're working with at the moment, with especially Manawhenu, to evaluate the various options for the sustainable forest approach. And again, I presented earlier a very conceptual schematic approach for land conduct system, but of course as a concept, the whole idea is actually to enable the water to disperse back into the receiving environment in a way that it does not cause either ecological erosion problems or cause any additional flooding risks into the receiving streams. So we are working very closely with Manawhenu in that respect.
Thank you. I'll take one more.
Just a clarification. The question was whether or not it's been made clear to iwi representatives that this solution will result in overland flow into the stream. Pawaringa.
I think.
It's a straightforward question.
Thank you.
Yeah, in my view, yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Trumper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to know, are we making comments now or asking questions?
No, but I did take that one. Thank you.
So we're just asking
We're
questions?
just asking questions, yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Steros, I kind of wondered where we were at with water meters and whether council had been reconsidering installing water meters. I know that it hasn't been, it's been discussed many times, but I just have heard that water meters were being considered, so I just needed your answer, yes or no, really.
I think in the context of the short presentation, the answer is no. However, I think there are many different factors this council or any water management authority has to consider before it arrives at the option of water metering. Fundamentally, the primary question is that why do you want water meters? And I think it's a long question and it requires a long answer. But at the moment, this council has not considered water meters.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, do you want to? Thank you.
Just a question. I do have a question, Madam Chair, but just also a comment in response to the answer to Dr. Morgan. Is that not only mana whenua are present and chairing that committee, but are being kept abreast of what's proposed for a discharge option, but Te Aroha Lakes Trust as the kaitiaki of the receiving environment in terms of lake are involved in that reference group as well. But my question was around stormwater, Stavros. So Her Worship asked a question about pipes versus open drains, but we see increasingly the use of swales, and we've seen that with our redevelopment of Te Tokorangi Drive, and we see it with Waka Kotahi's work on Tinai Road. And there is considerable comment every now and again about the use of bark. It's going to flood out across the road in the first weather event. And clearly there are safety issues around using rock adjacent to state highways. So, but clearly I just ask for your opinion on, there seems to be seasoning well on Te Tokorangi Drive, and it's no longer an issue with the bark, but does it serve a purpose in terms of improved water quality from those stormwater swales?
If you may, I think my opinion, there is a time and place for every kind of treatment. I think swales are appropriate where you have low flows of stormwater. Where you have high velocity and high volumes of stormwater, swales really are just a potential or the recipe for washouts. However, where you do have high flows and velocities of stormwater, there are other treatments like wetlands, attenuation ponds, gradual migration of water from high places, to low places. But so, you cannot exclude anything. You have to use the whole mix of potential solutions to address it. What is not for question is that the historical approach of taking stormwater from A to point B and focusing attention on the quantity of stormwater and not the quality is no longer and will no longer be acceptable, neither by the community, neither by the regulatory authorities, and therefore need to have the appropriate solution for the appropriate place.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Through you. Thank you for the report, Stavros. Just a question about the rapid infiltration trenches used to handle treated wastewater out Rotorua. How effective comparatively is that rapid infiltration trench solution? Thank you.
I think the question you need to ask, effective against what? I think the point is that the rapid infiltration or land filtration serve the dual purposes of removing nitrogen, phosphorus, and other sort of suspended solids and so on in the whole process. But that all depends on the level of and the quality of treatment you achieve at the treatment plant. If you're achieving at the treatment plant at the first place, then obviously rapid infiltration and land conduct system serves different kind of purposes. It serves mostly cultural purposes. And for the Rotoiti-Rotoma scheme, the system up there, which includes the whole of pre-treatment at each property, the conveyance, the treatment, and the rapid infiltration, to the best of my information at this point in time, it meets all the resource consent conditions that have been applied for.
Thank you very much. Look, thank you, councillors, committee members. No, just a moment, please. The Deputy Chief Executives were asked to give us a bit of a reflection on the past 12 months. So there will be no discussion. There'll be one or two questions for clarification, but that will be it. So I just want to make that clear. Thank you. So if there are no further questions, thank you. Thank you very much, Stavros. And thank you so much I'm sure Councillor Tapsell would have said it as the chair, but thank you for your efforts and the team efforts in the last 12 months. The District Development Group, Deputy Chief Executive, John Paul, kia ora and welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I've got the lucky last here, so hopefully I will be crisp and clear, and you'll enjoy the conclusion of these reports. So, councillors, just wanted to talk about what we're focusing on. So, it's very easy to put up some targets, even easier to put up some extremely ambitious, stretching targets, and that's what we have moving forward across the next 3, 5 and 10 years. So these are significant for us as a community. They're transformative and they're a massive, massive step change in where we've been over the last 2 or 3 decades. So that's the easy part of putting up that kind of focus and those kind of targets. And just in starting, I'd like to acknowledge the clarity, the direction and leadership from around this table. That really helps us as an organisation, and with my DCE colleagues, certainly enables us to make sure we can be unified in our efforts. And you've heard today about how we're applying the capability and the support across the whole organisation to achieve some of the significant targets we've identified in the LTP. So I do need to acknowledge my colleagues in that space as well. As my colleagues have also said, that's about our organisation and our CCOs being aligned and unified in its focus, but equally we can't do that without genuine partnerships out there in the community, particularly in Te Arawa and with Te Arawa, but also the effective collaboration we need to have with government, with landowners and with developers to ensure we're able to make these transformative changes for our community moving forward. So that's hugely important. And of course, if that wasn't challenging enough, we start from a position of crisis with a shortage of housing so significant. We have humanitarian issues and significant over-reliance by government departments on motels as emergency housing. So incredible deficit in our housing space, not just for those without a home, but equally those who are seeking to make a choice about a home moving forward, whether that's a first home buyer or whether that's someone as they're approaching retirement trying to find the right sized home for a different stage in their lives. In addition, of course, to that crisis position, we're one of the local economies devastated by COVID-19 from a social and an economic perspective. So on top of our existing crisis, you amplify that with a loss of employment, particularly in the tourism sector and across our whole economy. Again, the same COVID issues translate into it's hard to build houses without timber. It's hard to build houses without sufficient workforce and capability in place, whether it's contractors, engineers, or someone who can hold a hammer to help build homes. So some of the real challenges we face across the next decade. And equally, as our own organisation, we have a significant deficit of personnel as we start seeing an increase in consents and the need to move significant numbers of projects forward. And just to make sure that we round out all the kind of headwinds we possibly can, we've got a government making significant changes to our operating environment, whether that's 3 waters, RMA reforms, or even the future of local government. So a lot of challenges and issues for us through which we have to look towards those targets for our efforts. So a really important chance for us to look back and make sure we've got clarity around those areas of focus as we project into 2022. So as far as significant successes are concerned, we brought the government to the table to join us in a task force to start looking at the conditions being faced by those who are forced to be in emergency housing. So a significant piece of work there to try and improve the conditions for families particularly, but also for us to raise issues around the impact on our tourism economy, safety and the appearance of some of our key streets. So really important for us. I've peppered my presentation as usual with 3-letter acronyms. So our draft economic development strategy was carried forward from last year. So again, it feels like such a long time ago, into operational delivery in the long-term plan across the next few years. And part of that, of course, is the finishing off of the Destination Management Plan, which gives some clarity to that refocus, reshape of the tourism sector moving forward. We've completed our first housing and business assessment, which was a requirement under the National Policy Statement on Urban Development as a Tier 2 council. So a really important bit of fundamental information about what we need to do to address the homes and thriving communities space and an evidence base for us as we move into the plan change environment. That also, of course, supports the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund application that we've made, and Stavros has talked a bit about that and the challenges we've got in the stormwater space. So we're through on two parts of that, focusing really on the central and western side. Critical if we're to see infill and intensification to support those housing needs. And of course, the other part was empowering RED to start looking at a couple of inner-city council properties around expressions of interest around building some apartment and developments to revitalise and transform the CBD. And as I talked about the pressures on consenting, as those numbers go up, our staff are expected to do more and more. I think that's one of the key challenges and successes for us as an organisation, is that we have such a committed and professional set of staff who go the extra mile to ensure that we are able to keep delivering against those key priorities. So we're very lucky to have the organisation we have and the committed staff we have across all parts of our organisation. So just again reflecting that housing and business assessment was critical for us to really ground truth some of the numbers that were identified several years ago in the spatial plan, and that we've been working towards saying, hey, this is the scale of the housing deficit we need to address. So this is really important as our evidence base for plan changes, for supporting what we do with flooding plan changes, and in our conversations with government around public housing investment, and also to support development across our city. So critical for us to see that. And as I put there, really important input into plan changes that must be delivered by August of next year at the latest. So I've talked a bit about this, but hugely important for us if we are to enable that infill. So a cost that we can't really impose on developers or for mum and dad investors looking to downsize or subdivide a section in an existing suburb. So for us, this is about ensuring that we've got the capacity within our urban form, our current urban form, to enable the housing demands that we need to meet. So we cannot simply roll out a Papamoa type scenario. We cannot support our housing needs through greenfield development. We need to see infill and redevelopment as a critical pathway. Now for us, that investment in stormwater, as Stavros has said, gives us the opportunity to prevent flooding and reduce flooding risks, to improve the current system to deal with climate change, but also for us to enhance lake water quality through better interventions to prevent some of those flooding as well. We've talked also about trying to put a focus in on the CBD in the heart of our city, or the central city. So a priority development area as part of those comprehensive plan changes we need to do for our city. So again, this must be aligned around those plan changes for August of next year, and really create a focus on the CBD in the heart of the city. So those workshops and the work in that space is underway now, leading towards next year's delivery. Now, of course, that also picks up on another piece of work completed earlier on, which was the inner city revitalisation framework. So if you recall, we did a review of 20 years worth of strategies that have been aligned towards our CBD, and drew out again the clarity of what we needed to focus on to ensure a vibrant inner city. So that will be folded into that wider PDA process, and of course also builds on the work that was done by the RED Inner City Working Group during the first set of lockdowns, or simply post those earlier lockdowns. And we heard it from the wellbeing team too. One of the fundamentals we've learned is to make sure we get that understanding of the stories and our place communicated effectively in here. So that cultural foundation work really reflecting on the learnings we've had about engagement and partnering around the lakefront and the forest projects, now into the CBD and inner city context as well. So critical for us to make sure we're clear about who we are, what we are, and how we want to portray ourselves to the world. So from the economic development strategy, there were a number of actions identified. In my small box to the left, I wasn't able to cover off too many, and apologies about the colour coming through. One of those key actions was really to focus on looking at our Wood First policy again. So some work in that space has been delayed again by COVID impacts, but the destination management plan is complete. I talked about one of the challenges of developing our people is something when we go through to finalising our individual action plans across those 3 priority areas, there is that need to start saying, well, how do we ensure and support our workforce? How do we make sure we've got the capacity and the skills to deliver those transformations over the next few years? And most importantly, as we see our unemployment rate continue to exceed the rest of the country by significant levels, we need to find employment. One of the other advantages of us now being captured under that National Policy Statement on Urban Development is the need for us to really look hard at our own monitoring and how we track development. So this is just an example of some of that analysis. We've talked about the number of dwellings we need over that 10-year horizon, approximately 6,000. But as we've repeated a number of times in strategy meetings, 2/3 of those need to be in the 1 and 2 bedroom space to really reflect those future needs. So this is a bit of a backcast to just see where we've been over the last sort of decade or so. So you may not be able to see the years along the bottom, but you can see there the percentages. The green is the 1 and 2 bedrooms. So you can see that historically we've not delivered high numbers of units in the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And out to the right of that slide starts talking about those 2/3 for the future. So that's again something for us to focus on as we start looking at intensification enablement, but also the incentives and the opportunities we have to encourage smaller units to be developed for our needs going forward. So the proof is in the pudding. So we are seeing a response from the market. So this is the residential consents on our quarterly numbers for the district. So again, you can see out there on the right-hand side of this, the impact there. There's a bit of a dip, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bars back. And that was the first COVID lockdown of last year. So really since there you've seen that steady increase in the number of residential consents coming through on a quarterly basis. So what does that mean for us as a location? Well, comparing ourselves over the last year with the rest of New Zealand, not unsurprisingly we're starting to see a market that is responding to the fact that we're in a housing crisis. So the numbers of new dwelling consents coming through, running at about 123% of the previous year's level. Now that compares obviously to the rest of the country, which in many instances has an effective delivery of subdivisions and new homes, running at about 25%. But you can start seeing that growing momentum that's required here in our community if we're to start seeing that gain towards those number of homes and addressing that deficit we have. And just honing in again here, this last quarter, 90 new dwelling consents compared with the same quarter of last year when it was 42, and over on the right-hand side there, 41, which is the 10-year average. So again, you're starting to see that step up that's necessary if we're to start making some progress against the number of dwellings and the number of available homes that this community needs, not only to address the deficit, but also to start making sure we've got sufficient homes as we grow. So where's all this happening? This is a pretty hard slide to read, but it just shows you some of the pipelines of homes and sections that are currently taking place at the moment. So this is a snapshot, this is not complete, and certainly one of those listed there has actually got the wrong number. So for Ngāti Whakaui tribal lands, stages 1 to 3, The actual number of lots, because they vary to stages 2 and 3 consents, is 205. So across that little snapshot, there's a pipeline there of about 775 available houses or lots for development. And as of last week, there's another 120 that have been issued with their draft conditions of consent. So by Christmas, we might have another 100, 150 consented lots ready for someone to start developing. So again, that's great. That's the paperwork and the consent out of the way, but where are the homes and where's the development? So I just thought we'd just show you a few of those sites that are now underway. So this is Ngāti Whakaui Tribal Lands Stage 1 development. I think the original numbers were 52, but I actually think what's being delivered there is about 55 lots within Stage 1. The other important thing about this stage and the rest of tribal lands development that Stavros has identified is that they've also made a commitment to putting in place a percentage of affordable homes that meet the affordable homes dollar value. So this development has, I think, 8 or 9 homes of under 500,000, which is the threshold there for affordable. So you can see here all the lots are in place, all the titles are issued. I understand that I think all those lots are owned now, and the first homes are being built. So just that photo there picks up on the first home, and there's a couple of small bobcats just around the corner scraping a site for the building platform of another 1 or 2 homes. So really valuable contribution and a start of, as Stavros said, approximately 1,000 homes up through 11 different stages. Which actually brings us to this one. So this one starts highlighting the stage 2 and 3 earthworks, which is about 127, but I think it's about 140 lots that are being currently prepared for release next year and the year after. So important next stages, and as Stavros had showed you, I think there's about halfway in the middle there, I think just behind that ridge, is one of those areas where that first major stormwater detention area was going to go to support not just these 2 stages, but the 2 further stages which they're now preparing the consent for, which go up above that. So we'll be certainly in a position where earthworks are complete into early next year for stages 2 and 3, and the consents would have been lodged for the next 200 odd sections as well. So it's fantastic to see this development rolling forward with such confidence in our community. This is a particularly important one for us. So Pocahontas Freedom Villages. So this is one of the largest, if not the largest, consent we've seen this side of the 2000s. So 197 homes being put in place by Freedom Group Holdings. So this is a lifestyle village. So quite a significant development, and the diggers are already there starting to prepare the site off Pocahontas Road. So huge investment by them. And quite a significant change for us as far as preparing and putting in place some lifestyle opportunities for the 50 plus. So this is an opportunity to see people make some choices about the scale of their homes and potentially move into smaller units in a comprehensive development like this. So huge investment, probably approaching $100 million by the Freedom Group. So huge investment into our community and a really positive outcome. I couldn't help but put this up here, which was really an important quote that came through from the Board of Directors. So just reading it aloud in case you can't see it there with the white on blue. Freedom Lifestyle Villages wishes to thank the Council planning team for the professional manner in which they worked through the planning process with our team in order to help introduce more affordable and equitable lifestyle retirement to the region. So it was really wonderful for the team to receive that endorsement on what has been a huge commitment of time and effort into preparing and working through this consenting process. So again, there's an image there of the development they're intending to put in place. So quite significant for us with the delivery over the next few years. So really important for our community. Just picking up on some others, and sometimes this is where you don't see it. if it's not on your normal travel route around the city and you don't drive down particular streets, often you don't see the development that's occurring within our community. So 28 houses being added to Regency Park, so that was an extension they put in place there. So some photos there from our building inspectors as they were checking through and signing off those particular properties. Redwoods Park, a lot more visible. It's not hard to miss this one as you head up Tarawera Road or look across from the Forest Loop or frankly anywhere across the city. So Redwoods Park, 45 lots and a number of homes now going into there. So really we start talking about momentum and starting to go forward. So taking a statement from the chair of Rotorua Economic Development, John McRae, it's about diggers and cranes. So that's what we need to look forward to into 2022 and 2023, is seeing more of these sites and more of that pipeline converted into homes. But first it's the diggers and cranes to start moving us along there. So just some information there along that slide. You can see the average annual dwelling consents from about 2012 to now was 111 per annum. So last year we saw that significant step up in the number of homes consented, 331. And this year, conservatively, and again, this is something to do with how much timber there is and how much COVID impacts we suffer, we're projecting sort of 350 to 400 homes being consented. Now, this excludes Kāinga Ora's investment. So this is for private investment and market investment in units and homes in our community. So again, just there along the bottom is those new dwelling consent numbers from Stats New Zealand and Infometrics. So at this stage, happy to answer any questions, but I'd just like to again thank you for the clarity of our focus and the support, I think, for the whole organisation in ensuring we're able to focus on step change for our community.
Thank you very much for that comprehensive update or reflections of the past year. Thank you. Thank you, JP. So do we have some questions? Oh, yes. Mrs. Trumper, and then Your Worship.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, just a question around your consenting and whether some of those new consents are in the rural area or whether you've excluded them because you didn't actually include them. And I know there's quite a big development north as well as south, and I just wondered where they were in the picture.
That's correct. I picked up a couple from around the district. So Rotorua Road was listed there. So this is not just the urban area, it's also picking up lifestyle investments as well. As I say, that was our snapshot of some of the more major ones, but there is others as well. So actually as a community, we're starting to see a very rich choice and pipeline coming through.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Thank you, JP, and thanks for mentioning the other partners involved here, central government and the government agencies all involved in this, as well as iwi and developers. This is gold for us, and you said one word which the market is responding. That's wonderful for us to hear at this time of the year. And well done. And my only question is, as a Deputy CE, are you going to reach that terribly hard aspirational target that you were given to build a specific number of homes, or to see that they were being built?
Yeah. I keep trying to put caveats on headwinds blowing in our direction, but the direction of travel is extremely good, and I think it's that growing confidence we're seeing out there in the community and also the development community. It's really positive.
We're more than moderate growth.
If you actually looked at the population change we experienced between about 2013 and 2020, I think we had something like 13% population increase, which was meant to be our decade-long target. So we're certainly tracking at the higher end of medium growth.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, JP, you touched on the 9,000 jobs that could be created by this surge in housing builds, and the high unemployment that we have compared to the rest of New Zealand. And I was talking to, at a whānau event, I was talking to a saw doctor in a kawarau mill on the weekend, and they can't cut enough timber for the market currently. So is the Housing Task Force got any input into apprenticeships capability in the building industry?
The short answer is we are putting now a lot of effort into working with MSD. So I think one of the first things we've got to pull together quite quickly is an understanding of what kind of workforce plan we need over the next decade, and with a particular emphasis of looking to that upskilling. So part of that is also, one of the objectives we put forward is that we've got to do community wealth development here. We can't just helicopter in new employees to do work. That leaves the same people without jobs. So we actually have to take a local procurement, a local support and a local enablement pathway to start making sure that the people who are building homes here are the people who live here as well. So we're working quite hard now, just starting to lay that groundwork with MSD to start looking at how we can leverage that. And other agencies like Water are very keen to make sure, as they start seeing a sequence of delivering of public housing, there's opportunities for them to pick up local delivery.
Thank Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Chair. JP, excellent update. I was really interested in those freedom villages. That slide was excellent. Are they gated communities like the other one up there, the park? Are they?
I'm not sure, Councillor. I'll have to check on that. But as I say, it's a development there that's very much targeted at the type of units and specific home choices for people who are wanting to downsize. But that's the focus. We can certainly find out more information from Freedom Villages. They'd be keen, I think, to talk up or talk about this development, which is a first here in our district.
Kapai.
Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the report. Excellent overview. I had a question on the demand side and on the supply side. First, on the supply side, about technical capacity of our current workforce and the extent to which Toi Ohomai might be able to help us. That's the first question. The second one is on the demand side. That is that, what are the projections that you've used with regard to the number of homeless that we have currently in motels? Is that going to stay at 850 families, or will the number increase or decline? Thank you.
Toi Ohomai will be part of any workforce development planning we undertake. So my understanding is there's already a significant relationship there between MSD locally and Toi Ohomai. So we'll be looking to ensure that we capitalise on that partnership. The current numbers of people without homes in New Zealand, and again, we're one small part of that, are communities that are seeing the impacts of reduced home ownership, loss of employment, and increasing rent when there's not sufficient supply. The government's ambition is to build more public housing quicker, so we can stop relying on some of the current emergency housing options that they put in place, which is really a triage into motels. But I've sat here previously and indicated to you that we've got 650 pensioners who would be classified as suffering from housing poverty at the moment, based on the tenancy and the bonds being lodged with government. So I'd like to think the number is going to go down, but we may still see a bit more of an impact of the cost of living and the cost of rent before we actually can get sufficient investment in new homes and affordable rentals and or public housing. So at this stage, where I think the government's ambition is to see it heading down, until we start addressing that supply, we do risk seeing more people.
Thank you. Councillor Yates.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Nei rā te mihi, JP. Extensive report. I actually wanted to follow up on one thing. Mine's a comment, mine's not a question, but just last night at our Boys High Board meeting, we had, it's a first here for Rotorua, where Boys High getting behind building 2 homes. Whilst it might only be 2, they're committed to looking at trades, which is what we desperately need here in Rotorua. So I just sort of think, you know, if schools are looking at ways in which they can assist and bridge that gap, I think it's a fantastic opportunity. So that's also with Kāinga Ora, and I know the council was also mentioned last night. So me mihi ka tika kia koutou.
Thank you, Councillor Yates. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you. And just to touch on that as well, to pick up on the conversation just had, with those 6,000 houses that are needed over the next 10 years, we heard earlier that 1,000 of that 6,000 would actually be required for public housing. We have a significant lack of public housing in Rotorua, which is why we now have the significant issue of emergency housing as well. So there's a need for not only private investment into houses, but also that public housing. And on that, councils' key role in housing, in fact our only role in housing, is to provide pensioner housing. The rest of it is enabling others to invest through infrastructure, zoning and consenting. So is there in the plans going to be more focus on how we in our role as council, when you consider that, what do we have, maybe I think it's 160 pensioner houses across the district, but that numbers remain the same for a very, very long time. So perhaps it is time for us to start looking at how can we not only continue to invest and renew the pensioner housing that we currently have, which we are doing and we're very pleased about, but actually to look at how can we use the resources that we have to do that core service that we provide of increasing pensioner housing. So that's my first question, and then I'll come to a second one after that.
I think we've got 152 units, and as Thomas has indicated previously, he's been systematically moving through and ensuring they're to an adequate standard and compliant with the regulations that are currently in place. The challenge that all councils have is that we also don't receive a subsidy for offering affordable rental levels. So that's why in the past we've sought to sell to a community housing provider or partner with a community housing provider so that tenancies there can actually be subsidised, and there's sufficient money then to reinvest with expanding the stock. I think what you've highlighted is something that's important for us to relook at. Is there an opportunity to partner with others to put in place further pensioner housing units on top of the ones we already have? I think the key there would be the partnership and not us doing it alone.
And thank you very much, JP. And my last point was just congratulations on the development. 775 available houses or lots for development is a very different story to what our community is being told at the moment. So I am glad that we're able to let them know that over this past year, housing has been a priority for this council. And while it takes time to enable it, to have that number of houses just now, I think is a huge congratulations to the team actually, and thank you especially to the committed and professional staff that we have in our consenting and our planning teams. They are just absolutely working down to the core. They are doubling the numbers that they have done, but we haven't been able to double their team. So I think that goes to show that every one of those staff members are here because they're passionate for our community, and we can see that, and we just want to thank them for the work that they're doing to deliver on these aspirations for our community. So please take that feedback back to them.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, JP, for your presentation today. Thank you. Now, councillors, committee members, it looks as if we will be going over the 6-hour duration. And of course, as you know, under our local authority guidelines, we do need to move a motion that the committee resolve to continue the meeting past the 6-hour duration period. That is a requirement. That's correct, isn't it? Yes. So could I please have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Yates. So it has been moved and seconded that the committee resolve to continue the meeting past the 6-hour duration period. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Oh, did you? It was the Worship. And thank you. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. You'll be. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. And look, I just want to acknowledge both chairs and the committee members for allowing us the time today to actually fully unpack the presentations that have been provided by the organisation. Before I make some final comments, I want to return to the projections, the end-of-year financial projections that were alluded to at the beginning of the day. If you turn your mind to previous years, this organisation has always, at about this time of the year, encountered financial headwinds of various kinds. Despite those, every year for the last 7 years, we have delivered a financial result which is approximately plus or minus 1% of actually the final budget. So I think it's fair to say that we've evidenced a sound level of financial prudence and financial stewardship in this organisation. Things are a little bit different this year, and what we have projected is a risk of a 4 to 5% or thereabouts variation on our end-of-year budget spend, which is clearly a concern. It's a concern to me, and I know it will be a concern to you. The question is, how do we approach this? The concern, I think, that really echoes through my mind continually is that the pressure and expectations of this organisation currently are increasing significantly, and you've actually seen the results of the work to date, and there will be no let off, in my view, as to a decrease in demand in the next 6 months of next year. So the question is, how do we mitigate this financial spend? And there was a brief discussion about that at the moment. My view is that the only way we could possibly do this is by starting to stop things. I don't see it's possible to drive efficiencies into the organisation as we have in the past to actually achieve a more balanced bottom line result. So the question is, if you wish to achieve the normal bottom line result that we have in previous years, there's the potential early next year of having to consider actually stopping doing some things. That's not a decision that you need to make today. It's a discussion, however, that we will soon need to have, and we will need from you a clear indication as what your expectations are. So if I can turn now to the day. Look, it's been, it's not often, I think, that we unpack a complete view of the work of this organisation. Not only of the work of the organisation, but also the achievements of the organisation. Now, notice I've said of the organisation, but I really need to say to you, these are in fact your achievements, because the council, the committees are the ones that have set clearly to us the expectations that you have of this organisation. You've been very clear about what your priorities are. You've provided consistent governance oversight as to the work of the organisation through the Operations and Monitoring Committee. And you've seen today the organisation's response to your expectations. I think you've not only seen the outcomes that have been produced, which I think I'm very proud of, and no doubt you will be too, but I think you've also seen evidence some other things. You've seen an organisation with growing capability of partnering effectively with mana whenua. You've seen an organisation with the competence to partner with our community effectively. But not only that, an organisation that recognises that working alone within our own budget confines is not adequate to address the challenges of this community. Hence, you've seen an organisation that more often than not now is working alongside central government agencies to drive outcomes that otherwise we could not achieve alone. And those are significant developments for this organisation. You've also seen an organisation, I think, show its technical capability. You've seen a range of presentations that have behind them a huge level of competence of the staff of this organisation, and I think that's well being played out today. The other thing is a clarity of leadership. I think a number of members of the committee have acknowledged the DCEs. It's very clear that they are focused on your expectations and your expectations for the achievement of outcomes for this community. That's what this organisation is all about. And so for me, I really acknowledge the time that you've taken today to allow us just to explore what are the things that we are doing, how are we getting on in terms of the achievements. And I'd lastly just conclude really with JP's final concluding comments. You know, it has been an incredibly difficult time. To say it's been difficult is an understatement. Not only have we had COVID, but we've had significant uncertainty created by the level of reforms of local government going on actually around us. But despite that, because of the clarity of purpose that we've got, those outcomes have actually continued to be driven and to be achieved. The expectation of, as Her Worship has actually mentioned, of a council setting targets for large numbers of houses to be built is an extremely ambitious target, an ambitious thing to put on paper to say we are going to drive the development of thousands of houses. That is an exceedingly difficult thing to produce, when in fact, as I think Councillor Tapsell alluded to, we actually don't build houses ourselves. Yet what you've seen is through the work of this organisation, the market is responding. And the numbers for this next year are going to be significant in terms of new build developments. I'm confident with the work that we've actually got in train that it's not going to stop there. In out years, we are going to see the achievement of those large ambitious targets as the partnership with government, the partnership with developers and the partnership with our community continues to actually realise those achievements of having an environment in Rotorua where everyone has got the ability to live in a home that is suitable for them. So, nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Thank you very much, Jeff, for those remarks on reflecting on the mahi that's been undertaken in the past year. I am going to ask Councillor Tapsell. Councillor Tapsell, these three reports, the District Development Group, the update from JP, also the Infrastructure and Environmental Solutions Group with Stavros, and because you haven't, it would be nice for you to perhaps, because they fell under your operations and monitoring, it might be nice for you to actually, you've worked with them this year, of course, so I'd like you to have the concluding remarks for that.
Thank you very much for the surprise opportunity. No, I do appreciate it. And look, we've said so much. It's been a very long day. I think a lot of us are feeling quite overwhelmed by the amount of work when we take a moment in our busy days to just take a step back and look at all of the work that has been achieved over this year, and a significant amount of that work. I think what the most amazing thing is in this last year, we have delivered on dreams and goals and plans that have been in place for well over 20 years. In a single year, in 12 months, we've delivered on that. And we couldn't have done that without, of course, the drive of this council table who sets these high targets and expectations, and then, of course, the leadership through our Chief Executive, Jeff, Her Worship, the Mayor, Steve, and our DCEs who have delivered on that. So today has certainly been a day where a lot of us are feeling very grateful for the work that has happened, because it has been a really challenging time. The weight of the community has been on us at times. The perception for council to deliver, like I said, in areas that were never our responsibility, but because we are leaders of the community, sometimes that's up to us to step up, level up, and do whatever we can, and that's exactly what the staff in this organisation has done. So just once again, thank you very much. This really has been the year of delivery, I believe.
Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. So we'll move back into our own, into the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee agenda. And so we are up to now agenda item number 6, which is the Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2022. Thank you. Thank you, Stavros and Prasant.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't hold you much. However, just note that in the context of all the presentations before, we have a growing population, we have an environmental stewardship responsibility, and we generate waste. Managing waste, has to fall under a framework with statutory rules, and Dr. Prashant, Praveen here, he's leading the charge of formulating one next generation waste management plan for the next 6 years for consultation. I'll leave Prashant to do the presentation.
Thanks, Stavros. Kia ora koutou. This will be a change for you, considering that you've been listening about what we did in last 1 year. So this is about what we are going to do in the next 6 years. A waste management and minimization plan, it's a statutory requirement for councils under the Waste Minimization Act. So every 6 years, councils are supposed to review their existing WMMP and create a new one, which needs to be adopted by the council, and the Ministry for the Environment, it reviews the progress against these plans. Now, before I talk about the plan, I would like to talk about where we are in regards to waste minimization in Rotorua. So currently at this stage, Rotorua produces about 10,000 tons of biosolids, which we are composting, about 5,000 tons of recycling, which of course we are recycling into new products, and we send about 16,000 tons of rubbish to landfill. So overall, our rate of diversion is about 48%. And it's a huge achievement, recycling or recovering 50% of the waste. And this hasn't been easy. It has taken nearly 10 years for us to reach from 10% diversion to 50%, close to 50% diversion. It was driven largely by the curbside recycling, which started in 2016 and resulted in 40% increase in the recycling collections. And prior to that, Council made a decision to compost all the biosolids, and currently 10,000 tons of biosolids are being converted into vermicompost. So looking ahead, we want to set new targets. So we are at 48% right now, but over the next 6 years, we want to increase the rate of diversion to 85%. It's an ambitious target, but we believe we can do it. And there are two major approaches that can drive us towards that target. One is organics diversion, and the second one is educating the community for them to do the right thing. And what this waste management and minimization plan does is it puts all these things in black and white. So it has got our vision, goals, objectives, targets. It talks about what are the challenges, in meeting those targets, and how are we going to address those challenges. So that's what I'll be talking about. So as discussed, it's the guiding document, the Waste Management and Minimization Plan, and the document is typically arranged into 3 sections. The first section is an overarching strategy, which talks about the current situation, the future planning framework, and the challenges. The second section is the action plan, which talks about specific actions that Council would undertake to reach those targets. And the third section is the appendices. So in our case, we have got Rotorua's Waste Assessment 2021, which was approved by Council in April of this year. Our current waste minimization plan was adopted by Council in 2016, and it was also our first WMMP. And the new WMMP that we have drafted, it's not a completely new document. It actually builds on the goals and achievements of the current WMMP. Now, the The major legislation that drives waste management in New Zealand is the Waste Minimization Act, which requires council to prepare WMMP and adopt it. And we are required to write a new WMMP every 6 years. And as part of the Waste Minimization Act, the central government imposes a landfill levy, which currently stands at about $20 a ton of waste that goes to landfill. And half of that landfill levy is transferred back to council based on their population. So for us, it comes to about $260,000, $270,000 a year. And in the waste management and minimization plan, we need to outline how we are going to spend that money. And councils, if for any reason they are unable to prepare or adopt a WMMP, they don't receive the levy grant from the government. Councils are also expected to consider New Zealand's waste strategy in their planning document, which requires considering reduction in harmful effects of waste, both environmental as well as human health. And the second one will be to increase the efficiency of resource use or increase recycling or recovery. Other than these two, it's very important to consider local planning aspects. For example, the LTP goals and vision. In our case, Rotorua Vision 2030 was quite relevant. And also our climate action plan that was adopted by Council last year, and Te-Arawa's climate change strategy. So while planning this document, we have taken into consideration all these aspects. When we started working on the document, the first step was to review our current WMMP, and we have made excellent progress. And these are some of the goals that we had. For example, to improve the health and safety aspects of collections, and we now have got a very good curbside wheelie bin collection system. To increase district's environmental footprint via curbside recycling, and we have achieved that. Improving public litter bin system and promoting recycling at public places, that's happening currently. And the fourth major goal was to improve landfill management. And as you know, landfill has been capped, and it's in a much better situation than what it was 6 years ago. So we have made good progress, but at the same time, I would like to say that these goals are not just one-time activities. I mean, these are ongoing activities. So we need to continue improving our services or landfill management or litter bin network and maintenance. So all these things, they find mention in our next WMMP as well. Now, currently, we send about 16,000 tons of rubbish to landfill, and our per capita waste generation is just over 200 kg per person per year, or about 550 kgs per household per year. What we have noticed is that the waste per capita produced in Rotorua has increased over the past few years, and there are several reasons for it, but one of the most obvious reason is that we are seeing an increasing amount of green waste in our curbside bins. And that wasn't the case when people were using bags. So that's one reason. But at the same time, Rotorua has seen increase in population and some changes in recycling habits as well. In terms of recycling, we are doing very good. So we including biosolids, we are recycling about 15,000 tons, and that changes seasonally, but it has remained quite stable for the past few years. But we've also noticed that there are a number of challenges right now. For example, in our curbside waste streams, 55% of our waste to landfill is made up of organic waste, about equal amounts of food waste and grain waste. And we've got about 8% of waste as paper, another 8% as sanitary paper, which includes towels and tissues and diapers. So we have an idea that I think 65% of our waste is compostable waste. And this waste stream can be diverted quite easily. And so that's something that we are working on. A second major challenge that we have seen is that the quality of the recyclable materials that we are collecting has deteriorated over past few years. And part of the reason was the disruptions in the international recycling market, and negative news about that changed public behavior. And last year, when we were in level 4 lockdown and recycling got suspended, and you can see the break in the graph on the right side, that changed recycling behavior completely. So before that lockdown, our recycling contamination was between 15 to 20%, and it has increased now to 20 to 25%. And this has been a national trend. We are among the better ones, but in other parts of the country, 40-50% contamination has been reported. On the left side, you see a graph which shows the projections for population and economic growth in Rotorua. And this data is a bit old, and COVID might change things, but I think it's fair to anticipate that we'll see an economic growth and population growth in the district. And both these factors, population directly increases waste produced in the district, and employment and economic growth, it indirectly leads to consumption and increase of more waste. So we should be seeing more waste coming into future, and that's a challenge. The fourth challenge is that over the last 2-3 years, central government has been very proactive in waste area, and we have seen 2 taxes going up significantly. One of that is landfill levy, which increased earlier this year from $1.10 per ton of waste to $1.20, and government has announced that by 2024 this will go up to $1.60 per ton. And there are already groups which are lobbying the government to increase landfill levy to $140 a ton. So it's possible that in future the landfill levy may go up above $1.60. The second tax is the ETS, and ETS is a climate change tax, and which has doubled over the last years. So currently in our landfill cost, 1/3 of the cost is because of these 2 taxes, and they are anticipated to increase over time. So we must plan for diversion of waste from landfill to save these costs, and also to use more sustainable methods to treat our waste.
Thank you. I'm going to ask you if you could just take 5 minutes and then wrap it up. Thank you.
Okay, cool. I'll skip the slide because we are anticipating increase in waste volume. In terms of goals, we've got 4 high-level goals to create awareness on waste hierarchy and reduce harmful effects of waste, facilitate transition to circular economy, and also consider climate change mitigation in planning. And to support these goals, there are a number of objectives which are based on reduction on waste and increase in diversion, and also upgrading the facilities. We've got few targets which are based on waste minimization, and so we are targeting 30% reduction in waste to landfill, 60% reductions in food and green garden waste generation, and also 45% improvement in recycling quality. And these targets will be measured by our waste services KPIs. We've got 8 KPIs that we are reporting quarterly. Funding for these services, 80% of the cost comes from targeted rates, and others come from general rates and external grants. Now, to support the goals and objectives, we've got 10 action points. which includes extending curbside services to the rural areas. Diversion of organic waste, it's one of the most important action points, as well as setting up a local resource recovery infrastructure. Improvement in landfill management is an ongoing activity, and we continue to do it. We aim to continue it in future. Another major part of our action plan is to increase community awareness about waste minimization and recycling, as well as looking at regulatory aspects to improve compliance with our rules and guidelines, as well as to help small businesses and events to minimize waste. So the recommendation to the committee from us is to receive this report, and as well as to recommend to council to approve the waste management and minimization plan for public consultation. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you for presenting the report. I omitted to actually ask for a mover and a seconder that we receive the report. So we've not only received it and heard it, etc., but I'll do that now quickly before I open it up. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you, Your Worship. That the report Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2022 to 2028 be received. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion now. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Now, questions, please. Do you have any questions? Yes, Your Worship.
It's a wonderful plan with an incremental next step. Just e-waste is becoming quite a concern, and I couldn't quite see where it fitted in here with the two targets we've got on education and diversion of organic. Is there a strategy around electronic waste too?
Electronic waste we are currently collecting at recycling center. Most of the electronic waste can be disposed at either recycling center or landfill for a fee. But at the same time, central government is currently working quite actively in that space. And the product stewardship scheme has been announced for some of the products, and we are expecting e-waste to be included. So what it means is that every time you buy a laptop or a TV or a fridge, you'll be paying some money towards disposal of that product, and the producers of e-waste will be required to manage the disposal of those items. But meanwhile, till the regulations come into effect, people can take their used e-waste to recycling center, and they can recycle them for a cost.
Thank you.
Councillor Bentley, did you have a question?
No, I'd just like to move part 2, please.
Thank you. Dr. Morgan?
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good report. Wouldn't look out of place in other cities in the country, but I think we have a unique situation here in Rotorua. So I just, my question will be framed this way. The increase in waste after COVID lockdown, I think for most of the other cities, it was related to an increase in packaging as a result of the COVID preferences of consumers wanting everything packaged. So that creates a lot of plastics waste that wouldn't normally be there. That said, Te Ara ki Kōpū, the Te Arawa climate change strategy, is very specific about food sovereignty and local food sources, eliminating the need for packaging and storage and so on. So I'm just wondering, has that dynamic been taken into account in this strategy? Because when I read the strategy, I couldn't see a lot of evidence that that different way of thinking had been acknowledged. There was mention of Te Ara ki Kōpū, but other than the mention, I didn't see anything. So
I think it's important to note that this, waste, it's about waste. So it's about once the product has been used and has been discarded, how do we manage it? The only thing we can do from our end, and we're doing currently, is to educate people to reduce waste. So when I talk about waste hierarchy, you see the first step is about reduction and reuse. So it's about that. So all we can do from our end is to educate the community on the benefits of using local products, not using plastic packaging, taking their own cup, own containers to bring stuff, and that's included. But more than that, that's I think more of a central government's responsibility.
Supplementary?
No, I'm going to leave it at that, thank you. This is going out for public consultation, so it's not going to be the first time that we will see this. So, were there any other questions? Thank you. So, we do have a move, so there's no question. Thank you, you're seconding that, thank you. So it has been moved, I'm just going to read this motion, that the committee recommends to Council to approve Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 2022 to 28 for public consultation. It has been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Now, recommendation 6, the disposal of council land under the Public Works Act. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Kai Fong. Thank you, Councillor Tapsell. That the report disposal of council land under the Public Works Act be received. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Thank you, Stavros.
Sorry, Madam Chair, would you like me to say anything about that?
Well, not well, you can, if there's anything that you want to highlight in it.
It's self-explanatory. It's just basically, rationalizing some surplus land, special road reserve.
Yes.
And we recommend that the committee agrees to it. Thank you.
Thank you. And it's in page 20 on your report if anybody needs to. But I take it as read. Yes, Your Worship. 2, 3, 4 and 5. Thank you, Mrs. Trumper. Thank you. Any questions, discussion? No. Yes, Dr. Morgan.
Hi, kia ora tātou, through you, Madam Chair. So there's 3 properties involved here. When I read through this, one is a current issue that's being resolved, the third one. To me, it's actually a win for council because council needs the land for the road realignment. I think it's been positioned as just a request for a extended frontage for the trust at Waittle. But looking at the plans and that, it's obvious that council can deal with roading issues at the same time. Same trust, land for land, makes total sense to me. The other 2, not so convinced. These are both on land that was originally iwi land, that has been taken through the Public Works Act for the road. In both situations, the land has been utilised illegally for residences, and I just am concerned that the affected iwi should be consulted. It says there that the iwi shouldn't be consulted. I don't understand that, but that's the clarification I would like. I would not like to think that council are in the habit of shifting land that was originally held by iwi, taken by the Public Works Act, into private ownership without first talking to the impacted iwi. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Kia ora. I'm not sure if that has actually that's been undertaken, but usually the Rotorua 1. I don't know if there's any comment you'd like to make on that one, Stavros?
Yeah, Madam Chair, my understanding, and this is, you see that I came from legal property advisors, my understanding is that these recommendations have been made on the basis of the current council policy, which requires these discussions, to be had. That's all I can say at this point in time, but as the recommendations came from legal advice, within the framework of the council's disposal policy, I assume this was considered.
Yes, because we do have a disposal policy. Anything that relates to that was once Māori land.
That step has been undertaken. we assume when it's come to us that that step's been undertaken as per our policy?
I'm fairly sure it hasn't.
Okay.
I don't know, perhaps I might just ask Gina if she would know. Excuse me, Gina, would you perhaps know?
Kia ora, I did check this. These particular ones, they were taken. My understanding is that they were taken from the owners in which they're being returned to, but we will check that again just to make 100% sure.
Thank you. So so we're talking about the. Now, which ones are we talking about now? We're talking about Puna
That's the Pocahontas Valley Road properties. Yes. The Tarawera Road correction is a request from the adjoining Māori landowner, not a request from council. And the two Pocahontas Valley Roads, my understanding, although I will go back and check this to be certain, is that those were taken from the adjoining titles that they're being returned to, but we will check that and clarify.
Perhaps we could include that in the motion. Would that be? But we've noted it. We've noted and do that anyway. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Morgan, for raising that. Right. So we do have a mover and a seconder. Oh, sorry, Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to support Dr. Kepa on what he raised. I mean, this morning we were just celebrating ourselves, how the dreaded public works had, held us back in time, and anytime anything like that comes up, I think we should check in. Thank you, Gina. She's going to check up for us, but I think it should be supported and followed up.
Yes, thank you. Because we do have, this has been brought up before by Rawiri, and so we do have policies, but we just assume that they have been followed. So thank you for that. Thank you. So that's, so we have had a mover and a seconder for 2, 3, 4 and 5. I'm going to put those, I'll read those motions. That the committee recommends to council to approve the surplus road reserve at part of Pocahontas Valley Road, Rotorua, as shown on attached plan, attachment 1, be disposed to the adjacent property. 3, that the committee recommends to council to approve that road reserve at 145 Pocahontas Valley Road be adjusted in accordance with the attached plan, attachment 2, to accommodate the existing dwelling. 4, that the council recommends to council to approve that council officers be authorised to consult with the owners of Rotomahana Parekarangi 612B3 block and agree on new road reserve boundaries that accommodate the proposed development. And 5, that the committee recommends to council to approve that the cost associated with these be met by the beneficiaries of the surplus road reserve. So it has been moved and seconded, so I'll put all of those 2, 3, 4 and 5, those motions. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. Carried. Thank you. Now, a resolution to go into public. Thank you. We do have one item, so could I have a mover and a second? Thank you, Your Worship, that we go into public. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. It has been moved and seconded that we go into public excluded session. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. We do have the confidential minutes in this section and one other matter relating to an extension for contract 17/031. So I've moved and seconded. Thank you. It's been, so I'll put that motion. That, oh, I did, that we go into public excluded. Thank you. Oh, right. Thank you. Did I actually move that? I think I moved it, didn't I? I know I called for a mover and a seconder to go into public excluded, so I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, sorry, just in case I didn't put it. I didn't the last time. So we do have confirmation of minutes. The Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting minutes of the 11th of November 2021. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the